So my perspective today is, starting off by saying there needs to be more collaboration. I think that's going to be implied by what everyone said so far, but said this afternoon, but I'm going to say it. Greater collaboration will be mutually beneficial. And one of the things I was thinking about when I was thinking about this was, is that a particularly English phenomenon? Is there more collaboration in Wales? From the English perspective, I think there might be, I'm not sure. So my perspective is from working in a commercial county council-based archaeological service for 25 years, which I left last year. And I took a lot of commercial work and quite a lot of strategic type stuff, the kind of things which English Heritage paid for, which are designed to, as a resource for historic environment management, the kind of thing about what might happen in the future and how we'll have the tools available for managing that resource going to be there. So this, my job as it went through those years, evolved along the way, working with quite a few different academic archaeologists, and also some historians and some other disciplines. And so what I'm going to focus on today is talk about some of the obstacles to collaboration and joint working. Now my perspective is much more sort of low-key, I think, and sort of ground bottom-up type approach, as opposed to some more other things you've heard today. So, but I'm going to offer some positive suggestions about overcoming those obstacles. And this is my disclaimer at the end. The paper is a personal view, it doesn't affect my former employer at all. So what's this shortfall? There's a shortfall, I believe, in the desirable level of engagement between the academic and the commercial sectors. Now, of course, there's some very big standout projects, and we've heard about two of those this morning, which cover the whole of England and suck in vast amounts of data. I would say that there's a big, my own perspective is that some of those projects have had a very big, some of those big projects are having made a big effort to reach out to the commercial sector I mean particularly, and tell them what they're doing and what it means for their work. And others haven't so far as my own awareness is. And that's an interesting phenomenon, I think. I think some people don't quite see or how their work will directly impact on people working in the commercial sector in the future. I don't know, maybe find out more about that later. And of course, the development of the regional research framework was conceived as a way of working, of collaborating, working together. And again, slightly negative tone creeping in here, sorry about that. But it did expose for me, in my area, which is the West Midlands area, that's where I worked in that research framework, contributed to it, but it exposed some pretty big fractures actually, and misunderstandings about what was going on across the whole region, and indeed what was the nature really of English archaeology. Even that was like 10 years ago. I think some of those misunderstandings may have been eased, but there's still some quite strong misunderstandings between both commercial archaeologists and academic archaeologists. And anyway, despite those great things happening, more needs to be, does go far and that's why we're here today, isn't it? So these are my challenges I think that exist at the moment, challenges I've noticed. So lack of mutual understanding of respective cultures, I think, is the best way of finding them. They're the traditions, they're the interests and the goals of different subsectors within archaeology. There's a lack of understanding of language and terminology, but I've got a particular angle on that, and I'll come back to it in a minute. And there's a mutual incomprehension of financial frameworks. Well, the easiest one to talk about is money, so we'll start with that. So, so some of us here, we know the reality of field archaeology is in the framework of NPPF, and of course nobody can remember what PPG 16 said because that's ancient history. We've moved on to a new framework. So even in 2012, that was published. National Plan, and it creates a framework for what commercial archaeologists do, and of course other bits of archaeology as well. And one of the things of the nature of archaeology now is that actually, when you look at the money, the amount of money that's going into it, it's very large. It's quite common now for projects to be worth more than £250,000 total budget, and there's quite a lot of projects all across the country that are worth more than £1 million. That's not, for many people, that's not an unusual figure, whereas maybe 10 years ago that was quite exceptional. So therefore it might seem that field archaeology is very well funded, but that is a perspective that wouldn't really be true or from the point of view of the people inside it. And notice I would say, no managerial responsibility to endorse that idea. Money is always tight. And that's really because the rigour that goes into the budgets. The budgets are rigorously monitored from inside and from outside, from the people actually paying for it and the people, the archaeological consultants who work for the developers. So when you look at the budget, you think, well, there's got to be some leeway in there for some things. Not much leeway. Everything is nailed down. Everything is costed. Everything has got a defined time and a defined output attached to it, and that turns into numbers which can be quite big, but they're big because it's big at a big area. So this is the financial world of commercial archaeology. Moving on, for these project managers, people like the job I used to do, they're kind of financial managers as well, and financially manage that project. That might be £250,000. That's quite a lot of money to worry about. Keeping control of their budget is a key responsibility, and they try and make sure everything's on time and within budget. They expect everyone involved in the project to respect that goal. Moreover, their organisation is completely dependent, nearly always, on the income they're making that year. So that year's income has to match that year's expenditure. It's simple Mikorba style economics, nothing very complicated. It's just, if you spend more than you earn, that's it. If you earn a bit more than you spend, that's good. And that's an attitude of mind which all decision makers have. And if you don't have that attitude of mind, you'll find that you won't be a decision maker in that organisation anymore. Is that why I'm not? Okay. Organisation. Okay, and so financial matters, commercial organisations share the mindset really of thousands of small to medium scale businesses, because that is what they are really. But there are very, very few of them compared to the economy as a whole. It's a kind of, now that's, when I say about this, because people in it know it, but it creates a kind of a way of thinking about commercial work, which fosters a kind of attitude. So when it comes down to it, you say, project managers look at the cost of everything. It might say, why does this dumpy truck cost so much to hire? Next question is, can we find another dumpy truck provider who is cheaper? And that habit of mind is applied to all costs. Can it be done as well for less money? Because that's a commercial driver, commercial force on those people. But I think but actually it's not really about the money. The big thing is the uncertainty. That's the thing that keeps people awake at night. They're thinking about, is this project going to finish, or is this project going to finish when I hope it's going to finish, and is it always going to overrun, or is this bit of work going to cost more than I thought it would to? That uncertainty is what keeps people awake. That's their kind of, that's the bad stuff. The good stuff is finding the great archaeology. The bad stuff is the uncertainty. That's what makes project managers, archaeological project managers, who can put those two things together, are happy and successful. The ones that can't, aren't. Right. So another financial world, different financial world, which is one which I'm not familiar with, except for just by a kind of proxy, I suppose, which is what people say about what they can do and what they can't do, which is about the RAF. So I can't say I understand it, and sometimes when I've read about it, the impression I get from reading blogs like Harry Williams' one is that he doesn't quite like it or understand it either totally. So that's okay, that's fine, but it has an effect, doesn't it? It has an effect on how people work. And so I don't want to go into that, but I think that if archaeologists were clear about the financial world they lived in and the pressures on their work, that would be a helpful thing, because that would clear away the obstacles that sometimes there exist in misunderstandings. So the misunderstandings are things like, for example, people saying, well, why doesn't this university, the local university, get involved in doing local research? There's a question which has been asked by many units in many parts of the country of their local university, and we're hearing about some of the where that works well just now about Durham, but in other parts of the country you can see it doesn't happen, and it's not, that university isn't involved in local research. The answer to the question, why isn't it, might be, part of the answer might be to do with these financial constraints on that organisation, that university department. I don't know, but I think it would be clearer if people could tell people why they can't do things. If there's a financial reason, that's great, we can understand that, but more clarity would be better. And perhaps this understanding then can only really be achieved through, I would suggest, through open discussion. Perhaps that's what we're doing here. And I've learned some things today that some things I heard today have clarified what I thought to be the case, but means I've got a better grasp of it, so that's really useful. The second bit, hang on, works the wrong way. That's part 2 of language. So the language, now when I was thinking about this, I was thinking, but of course, if you talk to many field archaeologists who are very involved in commercial archaeology at many different levels, they'll say, well, we don't like academic research reports because they're written in a way which, you know, we go to look at them, we struggle to understand them, struggle to understand the language they're couched in. Whereas this other excavation report produced from a commercial unit is much more comprehensible to me. I can understand what they're talking about. They're talking my kind of language. I don't think that's the problem. I don't think that's a big problem. It's an effort. You can make an effort. They're written a different way. Get over it. You know, find out what they're expressing. You can Google it. Find out what those terms mean. It's not difficult. The real problem is not incomprehensible language jargon. I don't think the real problem is the words and concepts we think we do understand of each other's work, but actually we get it wrong. So I've just got one example really. This is the jargon bit. This is the way in which this is the MPPF, which is in a kind of sort of brain dead legalese with no commas, because that's what lawyers say. Don't put commas in. That confuses people. Okay, right? So it's all these kind of words which have got all these different words. Archaeological interest means something very. If you stumble on that word, what is a heritage aspect with archaeological interest? You're not going to think, I know what that means, it's obvious. You're going to find out what that means. It means something very specific. It's got a meaning to it that works. But this word here, field evaluation, well, everyone thinks they know what field evaluation is in archaeology. But really, so what I'm saying is the language is new and getting used to, but the important point is, it's the words we think we understand that we don't quite really fully understand, which is the stumbling block to mutual understanding. Now, one of these words, I'm just going to talk about gone too far. Look at that. Is this term evaluation? Strange. Right. So what I was going to say was that which was mentioned earlier. This point that many of the most of the grey literature we've talked about earlier today. A lot of those grey literature reports are field evaluations, and field evaluations have developed a way of writing over the last 20 years, which let's say 20 years for want of a better word, 20 years. It started off, they read like, if you pick them up, they read like small excavation reports, ones written 20 years ago. One of the very first ones we did were badged evaluation. The ones that are written now are targeted very precisely as a process and a group of people. Only one of those people is an archaeologist, and that's the planning archaeologist who's responsible for making advice. The real audience are the commercial funders of that work, developers, and also the planning committee. You better make sure that your report exactly fits the requirements of that those organisations, those people. You're not worried about what somebody else might read it, might think down the road. It's just about this process, which is the local authority planning system. That system is geared up to processing information and evidence from a whole range of different sources about trees, about natural environment, about, God forbid, newts, which is a big problem in Worcestershire, for example, newts everywhere. Badgers, another problem, because they're all protected species, and about things like power lines and access to sites. They have to process the information seamlessly because their peers are planners and other planners in other departments. They want to be posting that data, your archaeological information, as quickly as possible. You better make sure your information fits their needs, or there'll be trouble down the road, if you see what I mean. And that means that providing this readily useful information means you cut out more and more. Those reports have been, through a kind of process of evolution, they've been forced, adapted to fit into a process, and that process, as the governments have said, you've got to be better and faster at processing your planning applications. Quick turnaround, quick turnaround, quick turnaround. Don't wait, don't slow down, get it sorted out. And archaeologists have kind of evolved their evaluation reports to fit that process. So that's left the archaeological world quite a long way behind, really. The rest of the archaeological world behind. Those evaluation reports are not geared at that archaeological audience, they're geared at the planning world. That means that you can read an evaluation report, and it's quite hard to know, if you're outside that process, what these people are talking about. Why is it being written in this way? Why are they interested in the artefacts? Artefacts, don't matter. It's data evidence. The detail is not germane. It's just the data isn't germane to the point of making a decision about shall that development get planning permission. And if it does get planning permission, what are the conditions being put on it? It's not germane to that. Nor is the environmental archaeology. And virtually, the only thing they really care about is the plan of the site, how big it is, the archaeology, compared to the footprint of the development. That's the most important piece of information. That, they're ready to say go or stop or change. That's what we want to know. Sounds a bit negative, I know, but that's the reality they're working in, some of these people. So commercial archaeologists have defined concepts in terms of defined by other large sectors of people. Construction industry, massive construction industry, lots of different people in it, all very determined on getting their thing built as fast as possible, and therefore they make that money then, they can sell it. The planners, the legislators, the health and safety executive, all of whom have got a language, all of whose languages have permeated the field archaeology process of doing the evaluation and the initial field work, and that squeezed out the kind of research bit, if you like, the research agenda is squeezed out. So the professional language of commercial archaeology mirrors this shared professional language of everyone else involved in the development industry. It becomes second nature, and then there are various bits of language creep in which confuse people as well. Most of the terminology, this seems to have common sense meanings as well. It's a language thing, but it may signal a hard-edged reality. There's a particular thing I like called the considered constructor scheme, which sounds as fluffy and as lovely as you can possibly imagine, but actually is a hard-headed competition between developers to be the most considerate constructors. It's nothing to do with what considerate might mean to you and me. It means considerate from the point of view of the industry itself, are looking outside and seeming to be good. It's not about human values or anything like that. So in this language thing, I just wondered whether we need some kind of a few glossaries around so we can just communicate with each other and people can grasp what we're talking about. Now my bigger point really is just about cultures. So commercial archaeology operates in a framework which is driven by the needs of archaeological resource management. Well, everyone could have paid lip service to that and knows about it. And our focus, their focus of most people working in it, is really the consequences of change. And as you've heard a bit already, that fieldwork is reactive to changing outside. It doesn't determine where it goes. That is something else, other process, wider economic processes are determining that fieldwork, where that fieldwork should take place. So the survey and synthesis is proactive, as we said. It's proactive and it's anticipating what is reactive and proactive, I suppose. It's reacting to the things that are happening now, and the proactiveness is really just thinking ahead, 5 years, 10 years, what's coming down the line, where do we think the economy's going, and where do we think the environment's going, where's change happening, perhaps the coastal change agenda or these other things, which are think about what happens in the future and are we ready as a professional subsector of the archaeology profession to react to that coherently. It's not really, so that agenda has been determined by others. I suppose that means that that often commercial archaeologists are thinking, in the work they're doing, their experiences thinking about the fairly short term between doing the project now and seeing the result. Now, maybe not publishing the result, but as far as they're concerned, seeing the result out there within a fairly short space of time. They're thinking about, 2 or 3 years down the road, this project will be finished and they'll be integrated back into the data will be available, maybe not published but available, and that's what they're working towards. You don't find many people thinking really long term, 5 years, 10 years into the future. That's a habit of mine, I suppose. But this is what I'm talking about to this minute is the operational framework of commercial archaeology. That's the world people live in, but that doesn't describe the people doing it. And as we were hearing about earlier on, all the people, 99% of the people doing in commercial archaeology are in it because they love doing archaeology. They love the investigation of sites, they love the finding out about sites, they love the kind of the freshness of a new project. They can get fed up with yet another Romano-British rural settlement that looks like the other 3 they excavated in the last few years, but fundamentally they love doing it. So actually they pay, this whole world we've heard about, I've been talking about, is only part of their lives. It's the thing they talk about, the thing they have to understand, but it's not who they are, because they feel right, they feel that they are actually archaeologists and actually they are carrying out archaeological research. And they feel that even despite the kind of the external evidence suggests they're just clearing the sites away for developers. People do say that, but actually hardly anyone I've met ever really believes it. Because the people who do believe it, unfortunately, they kind of leave archaeology. Most, the reason, one of the things about it is the kind of obvious point, which everyone mentions, is that commercial archaeologists know that developers who pay for their work don't care a damn about it, not interested in the slightest, except for maybe there's 1% of all archaeological projects, or it's less than 1%, where it brings a kind of a value, a new value, a kind of a heritage value to that development that the developers can get on board and reflects well on them. 99% of the time, they're looking at the archaeology being done and gone efficiently. They like efficiency, they like speed, they like kind of clarity, they hate uncertainty, and if all these boxes being ticked and the people out of the way, it's a professional relationship, but they don't care about it. They don't care about it in the way they care about other parts of that development, which is germane to their whole thing. You know, they want their development to be successful, they want their building, their great new shopping centre to win a prize, even though it looks horrible, but nonetheless that's what they feel good about. If they can rent out that development really quickly and get nice big shops in it, their commercial development, retail development, they feel great and they go to their conference and their peers respect them and think they're doing a great job. The fact that they've done the archaeology and it's been a great archaeological site, or alternatively there's been no archaeology there, none of those things have any bearing on their kind of their worldview or their engagement with their fellow developers. So we don't offer much to them, really. We don't bring very much. All we bring is efficiency and perhaps, and also, obviously they want the cost to keep down because that's eating into their profits. But put that aside for the time being. That means that commercial archaeologists, sometimes the people paying for the work don't really. They respect them. It's a professional relationship. They don't really think they want. They're not that interested in what they're putting out there, and that means that commercial archaeologists often feel themselves slightly. Well, you talk to many people who feel their output is not. They're not quite sure where it's going. They're never doing it. They know it's the right thing to do, but then they think, well, who is actually going to ever use this information again? It's going out there. Who's ever going to use it? They often say that, and that's interesting. Why the big projects that are happening across the country actually have a beneficial effect, because that's going to show people how that data they put out there does get used. Now, so this is some of the language. So this is a project that we did a few years ago, which is all about a survey project that was done to look at the Aggregates Levy Sustainability Fund, what a great thing that was, to look at a river valley in Worcestershire, and it was all about developing the capacity to manage aggregate extraction landscapes in the future. So that was the reason the project was funded, because it was going to deliver on that. Here's a project I was involved in, well, just as a volunteer actually, this summer, which was a project in the Scilly Isles, which was the project extends the details and provide a critical contribution to understanding the process of transition both within the western seaways and other sites. So it's looking at the whole of the Neolithic, across the whole of Britain, and big picture, big story. So these are the differences, these are kind of the words which I look at and think those are kind of characterising the different kinds of ways of doing archaeology, developing the capacity to manage, that's a good heritage management kind of phrase, how making a contribution to our understanding. Now these phrases, it's going to take people say, oh well, that's all changing now. It's not stuck with these ways of thinking. But these ways of thinking there's 20 odd years of this, 25 years of thinking this, developing the capacity to manage as opposed to finding out. That's quite a long time of instituting a kind of attitude to archaeology. So it's going to take quite a long time to change that. But that's my last point, which is about who we are, is this is not really who we are, this is just, we express these things very strongly, but it doesn't sum us up as archaeologists. So archaeologists in different sectors need to understand each other. The financial framework, I think that's be a good way of starting off, because that's an objective thing people can talk about and point to the hard facts. This, what they are doing in terms of the framework they work within, I think there's a language thing sometimes people can get hooked up on. Clarity could help, and that perhaps understanding, perhaps meetings like this help to clarify those things. I'm sure they do, in fact. But one of the things I think is what a lot of people are doing is reading outside of their comfort zone. I found it really useful if you actually read what people say about what they're doing on academic projects and really get through to the actual detail of why they're doing it and who's paying for it, then look about what the criteria are for that funding happening in the first place. You then begin to understand the world those people, the academic archaeologists, from my point of view, might operate in. I think in the same way, you know, more reading outside of comfort zone would help people understand the ways in which other people think. Thank you very much.